I was just about to start my video on cold crashing, and somehow we've managed to acquire this random dog. Um, Fortunately, we know who the owner is by the collar, but yeah. Good deed for the day done, I think. Just randomly walked down the driveway, and one of the most surreal things ever. Hey, Mia. Hey? What's that? What's that? Is that a camera? Well, now that excitement is over, the dog has been returned to its owner, so that's a good deed done for the day. Can finally talk about what I wanted to talk about, which was cold crashing, which is something that a lot of home brewers do, and what I consider to be an essential part in my brew calendar. So what we're going to discuss today is literally why brewers cold crash, what purpose it has, when you cold crash, when not to cold crash, that's also just as important, and how long you should keep it in cold crash for. So let's talk about why we cold crash. Basically, in layman's terms, cold crashing is the act of taking your beer which is fermented, putting it in a cold place, maybe, let's say 6 to 8 degrees Celsius would probably be a reasonable temperature. In America, generally, they say working in Fahrenheit, anything below, I think it's 40 degrees Fahrenheit is a reasonable cold crash temperature. I've got a nice hot brew on this cold spring morning in England. So let's talk about where you can cold crash. The most common place in England is probably going to be your garage, because it doesn't get much light, so it stays generally quite cold. It's obviously going to get colder at night. But apart from that, the only other place that I can really think of is a lot of brewers actually have room in their fridge to cold crash, which is great, because a fridge obviously has much more regulated temperatures inside of it. It will probably keep within 1 to 2 degrees of your kind of ideal cold crash temperature. So if you've got a fridge with room, I recommend that you cold crash it there. So let's move on to why we cold crash. One, it allows any remaining yeast to settle out of the beer, and kind of essentially what they just do is they just shut down, they go to sleep because they can't operate in these really cold temperatures. So they just slowly fall to the bottom of your fermenter into that layer of trub. Cold crashing also allows other cold break material such as hop residue to fall out of the beer and again settle out to the bottom of your fermenter, which is great, especially if you want to achieve a beer which is reasonably crystal clear and not cloudy. If cloudy is something you want to go for, if you don't like clear beers, then maybe cold crashing isn't for you, but it has so many benefits that I can't recommend it highly enough. Apparently as well, cold crashing does actually improve flavour. I've never not cold crashed, so my opinion is kind of invalid on this topic. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. If anyone knows any more information about this, please do leave a comment. And it also helps prevent oxidization. So when you come to bottle your beer, because of the cold temperatures, that forces any oxygen right out of the beer, which obviously makes it much more ideal for carbonating, because as we all well know, oxygen is the enemy of bottling day. So now let's talk about what you shouldn't do when it comes to cold crashing. There's only one thing, and that's cold crash too early. Now, as I just said, yeast don't like cold temperatures. They will not operate at those temperatures. If you cold crash before your beer has finished fermenting, then you're not going to reach your final gravity because your yeast are just going to basically stop working. So that's pretty much why you shouldn't cold crash early. Apparently as well, as I said, I've never not cold crashed, so I don't know this. Apparently if you cold crash too early as well, that can introduce some estery flavours into your beer. If that's something that you actually want to do, because some people deliberately put esters into their beer, then by all means cold crash too early. The final thing, before you actually see the cold crashing take place, not all of it, of course, is how long do you cold crash for? which was probably my biggest question, I actually tend to cold crash for about 1.5 days. Some people go for 2, some people go for just 1. This really is a game of experimentation, like all of homebrewing. You just got to mess around with it. I would say 2 days. I was recommended 2 days, but mainly just because of a tight schedule, I've kind of just pushed that back to 1.5. On my last brew, that turned out just fine. One final thing I would add: the garage door at the back here is west facing. The sun sets in the west, so in the evening a lot of UV light's thrown into this garage. What you're going to see me do is just throw a sheet over the fermenter, basically, just to keep it out of the UV light. Right, I'm done. Happy Homebrew Wednesday, everybody. You're going to see me now just basically put my fermenter into the garage. It's boring, it really is. There's nothing interesting about it. Thanks for watching, guys, and it's cold crash time. Oh. Here's the beer. I'm just going to lay it on a sheet to keep the bottom of it clean. Been trying to rock it as little as possible, coming from inside, from where I normally ferment it, because don't want to kick up any of the trub, don't want to kick up any of the yeast. So airlock and everything, sheets just going over this. It's come out of fermentation at about 18 degrees already. Just this little strip thermometer indicator is showing we're at about 14 degrees or 57 degrees Fahrenheit. Just a little protection from the UV light, and that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That's cold crashing for you.